we've been talking pretty much exclusively about live music performance in one way, shape, or form. We're going to talk now about the physical and streaming and the other side, I guess, of the music industry. And what are the sustainability impacts? What are they looking at, thinking about? How do we interact, and all sorts of things. So let's get into it. You see who's here. Actually, Ali Miller. Ali Miller is to my immediate left, followed by Hannah Grand from Spotify. Ali Miller is with Furnace Record Pressing. And the far end is my good friend Dylan Siegler from Head of Sustainability at Universal Music Group. So let's go down the line. First of all, what does, first of all, I think of the three, Ali, Furnace Record Pressing may be the lesser known of the three. So talk a little bit about, first of all, what you do, and then talk about, just briefly about what sustainability means, and then we'll get deeper into some of these things.
Sure. Great to be here. I'm Ali Miller. I'm the CEO of Furnace Record Pressing, and we're a vinyl manufacturing pressing plant located in Alexandria, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. And for us, very excited to be part of this conversation. Our little corner of the industry is not one who has been so included in the sustainability conversation until recently. We've had some talk today about the eco record, which is an exciting new format, and there's of course traditional PVC, there's recycled PVC, there's biovinyl, which is traditional with a recycled component, and for us, we're excited to talk about not only the compounds and how they're important and exciting, but everything else that goes into making a vinyl record, which is a really important part of the music industry. It's important to artists, it's important to fans, and there's a lot of ways that we can be impactful sustainably that don't necessarily have to do with strictly the compound. There's a lot more that goes into it, so I'm excited to talk about that a little bit today.
Yeah, and we'll get into the life cycle of physical vinyl and lots more. Hannah Grand, Spotify has not, maybe not new as a company, of course, but new on the sustainability scene. Talk a little bit about your role there and what you're working on.
Yeah, and I think, that's still the number one question I get is, what does Spotify to do with sustainability? So good to be here. But I think just what we hear today as well, the music and entertainment industry are playing such an important role really in terms of combating climate change and engaging more. So basically what we do is two parts. So one is, of course, also digital streaming has a climate footprint. Even though we often think more about the physical aspect of it. So that is one thing that we're focusing on in terms of, well, really the first step was just understanding what are the emissions. When I started, we set out a target to get to net zero by 2030. And we have a very ambitious founder who said, let's just have that target and we'll find out along the way how to get there, rather than as some companies maybe do it more bottom up and think, okay, what can we potentially do? And I really like to have such an ambitious target, but it was also very difficult because there was no research basically in terms of the emissions from streaming. So we spent a lot of time on just understanding that so that we actually know what is causing emissions, so we focus on the right things. And now we know, and now we've actually cut our emissions the last 2 years. But the other part that I think is even more important is actually how we use our platform. So we spend time on how we can use the power of music, podcast, audiobooks, and other types of entertainment to really engage more people. And we'll dive into that a bit more, but those are kind of the two main aspects I spend a lot of time on.
Great, thanks, Anna. So Dylan, Universal Music Group is kind of the big kahuna here. Was it 40% of all recorded music or streamed music is one of your artists, and you cover really the whole gamut. But talk a little bit about what your role. You've been in the role for about a year, 7 months. Okay, I've lost track. Seems like a year since you've left Trellis Group. But talk a little about what you're working on.
Thanks, Joel. Yeah, I have been with UMG 10 months.
10 months.
And I joined this company from a career in corporate sustainability with a background way back in the past in music journalism. And so my first love was really music, and then I found sustainability and accidentally / on purpose spent 26 years playing in that space. UMG happens to have an extremely poetic purpose statement. the purpose statement is, we exist to shape culture through the power of artistry. And I didn't actually know that until I was already part of the company. And it's weirdly inspiring for a major corporation. What we do in sustainability at UMG is that we believe that we actually have the power to help shape culture's response to the climate crisis and help shape culture's response to every crisis that we're facing right now in the environmental space. So whether that's biodiversity loss or bird extinction, or we have the platform of the biggest artists in the world to actually support the bringing of these issues to the masses, and to support the idea that superfans can actually be a solution. So it was really exciting to meet Hannah and to start talking about how Spotify and UMG actually share that idea that absolutely we can reduce our footprint, and we will, but we're excited about the opportunity to do more to help shape culture. And we'll get into that a little bit more.
Well, I'm going to stick with you and work our way back here. And so talk a little bit about what that means at UMG to affect culture. There's so many ways that you impact. First of all, you have physical vinyl, and you said optical discs still in some parts of the world, and of course streaming, and then all sorts, just everything, as I said. And then you have the platform of the artist itself, the relationship. So where do you lean in on all of that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I want to be clear that when I say that I'm not that excited or exercised about our carbon footprint, that doesn't mean we're not going to do everything we can to be a good corporate citizen, and not at all to say that we are not going to reduce that footprint. So we are working on, for instance, our merch and our physical audio, which makes up a huge portion of our indirect emissions and our indirect impacts when it comes to waste. We are working to transform those, both of those areas from the inside, and it's going to be really exciting to hear from Ali about how Furnace is working on those same issues. We manufacture and ship a large amount of heavy stuff around the world. That has a lot of impacts, and we are working to reduce those. We also have offices in like every country you can think of, and we operate in 18 languages, and it's a massive business. The life cycle of music, in terms of how it's made, how it's delivered, and then what happens to it later, there are absolutely impacts in there that we are working very, very hard to understand and to collaborate with everyone in this room, really, to change. And as Joel mentioned, that isn't actually where I want to focus. I will do all of those things, and I have a really crack team that's helping me to do that inside UMG, and many, many great partners. What I see as our major opportunity is this other piece. This is our cultural handprint. We have the opportunity to use our influence for good, and that is where we are really going to be focusing in the future.
Yeah, and just for those who don't know the language of handprint versus footprint, may be obvious, but I'll just say the obvious, that a handprint is the good work that counters the footprint, which are the less helpful impacts that any company has. So, Hannah, what are the impacts that you're addressing? I mean, you've got servers, you've got I don't know what else. Where are the biggest impacts of Spotify on climate, and talk a little bit about what you found when you got there, and how you're starting to address them.
Well, it's both like a luxury problem, but also a challenge that 99% of our emissions are scope 3, because we don't own any data centers, we don't own any offices, so we own very little and don't produce anything. But so we really focus on finding good partners, and we try to see what we can do on our end. So everything from hopefully when you have Spotify and listen on your app, we try to make it as efficient and smooth and lean as possible, both when you download it, so it doesn't require loads of energy and then you need to charge your phone again, but also then when you're actually playing and using it. So we work a lot on our end, and we have so many great engineers doing that. But also then I think if you're playing on other types of devices, I think TV is a good example. Usually you don't need to have your screen on. You maybe don't need to see that album cover or so. So there we actually have a dark mode, so you can listen to Spotify, but still the TV could be in more like reduced light or even black, so that actually doesn't require electricity. So things like that are things that we can do, but then we are also reliant on finding partners that have renewables and that we also share and store the information in the right places. So we work a lot on that.
How would you characterize the Scope 3 emissions? It's mostly streaming, I would imagine servers. Is there some way to compare that to something else in the world in terms of a city or a number of cars or a company in terms of the energy impact? Just so I get to understand the scale of what you do.
Good question. I mean, our emissions are around 300,000 ton. I think those numbers usually don't say that much. You need to compare it and also more see the trend. We've actually reduced them now for 2 years in a row, which I'm super happy about. We're still growing as a company. So I think that's important to actually decouple growth from your growth in emissions. But if we look at more comparisons on kind of, this is data centers in general, we talk around 4% of the energy consumption. That's like the aviation industry. And I think it's just interesting how much we focus on the aviation industry and reduced flights and so on, and taxes and so on, but we don't do anything almost for data centers. We're seeing more and more happening given the rise of AI, which actually means that we have energy shortages and needs to find more renewables. And I always try to look at the positive side, and I think hopefully that we use more and more data power that would actually drive the renewable revolution even more. And I think we see that in many cases as well. So we'll see. But I don't have exact numbers for us, but for the overall industry, that's roughly the numbers.
Yeah. Ali, mention the life cycle of physical vinyl. Tell me what you've learned and why that's important to be looking at.
Sure. I think there was a panel a little bit earlier today about merch, and there was some conversation around, the fiber of a T-shirt is really important, but that's not the whole story. And I think it's important when we're talking about physical media and we're talking about vinyl to understand that while the compound, whatever form of plastic it may be, that the record is created out of, all of the different compounds have pros, they have cons, and different people can offer different solutions to that. But I think if you take a step back from that, zoom out a bit, and you think, if you're creating vinyl, physical media for North America, it probably would make sense to create that product in North America. So you're not transporting something large and heavy from Europe to the United States that can be really impactful on your carbon footprint in not a good way. So I think there are options in North America. We're one of them who can make a vinyl record that is made of a more sustainable material, and it's right here in North America. So that's something that isn't talked about as much in the larger conversation. I think should be a part of the conversation. Beyond that, when you look at sort of the less flashy, headlines, that the eco-vinyl, eco-records, bio-vinyl, very exciting and flashy. Those are great marketing words, and they're really important. But something else that's important and is really important to us at Furnace is making sure that our manufacturing facility is sustainable from top to bottom, that we have, we have a closed loop within the facility, that we have dual boilers that are really modern boilers and get to steam very quickly. We added a redundant boiler last year, which has reduced our usage of natural gas by 65%. And that was a big investment for us, but it was really important for us. It makes the plant more efficient, both in terms of the quality and in terms of our sustainability, our carbon footprint. So I think there's a lot of sort of non-sexy parts of making a vinyl record that are really important. They're important to us. We built our plant with that in mind. And part of that is compound, part of that is utilities and the way the facility is set up and how you run the facility. And part of it is choosing a manufacturer, a supplier who matches your market so that you're not moving literal tons of vinyl records on airplanes. We saw some facts around airplanes throughout the day, and I think we can all agree that's not a great way to move product if you don't have to.
You mentioned closing the loop. What loop are you closing?
Oh, I was talking about literally the utilities in our facility. So we don't use a water chiller. You can have a chilling tower for your water, or use evaporation, but we have a closed loop system. So our water is
I see.
constantly moving through the system. We in fact go so far as to use our cooling water to air condition our pressing room. So a pressing room can get really, really hot. We have 18 presses running, sometimes 24 hours a day, and we learned the hard way how hot that can get, but we use our cooling water to cool the facility. So that's just another way that we can sort of keep ourselves where we need to be in the sustainability picture.
There are a number of other companies who are producing vinyl these days, and some of them, I don't know, maybe even many of them, are now claiming to be green in some way. And you've talked about that there's more than a little greenwashing going on out there.
There
tell us,
is.
yeah.
I think in any industry, but certainly in the vinyl pressing industry, there's a lot of greenwashing. I think part of the process is most plants recycle your vinyl. So if you have rejects, you can regrind it, you can use it again. And we've seen in the past couple of years, a lot of plants have started sort of touting that as their eco alternative. And it is ecologically sound, but it's also just kind of best practices. The people will use things like that to sort of get themselves in the media attention. I'm sure you see that in other industries too. We do that. We're proud of that. We can offer pressings on 100% recycled vinyl. But quality is really important to us too. And so we're not going to press something that doesn't use a compound, whether it's recycled or partially recycled, that doesn't sound great and really represent what the artist is trying to do too. We recently got certified to press and sell biovinyl in the United States, and we'll be the first pressing plant to do that in the US, which is a more sustainable version of a traditional PVC. So the sound, the way it acts, the way it lasts a lifetime, ideally, acts exactly in the same way as a traditional virgin PVC, but it has a more sustainable, the way the compound is derived is more sustainable, and I can tell anyone who's interested more about that. I think that taking the extra time to get ISCC certified, which is really a pain in the ass, but rightfully so, because you have to show that you're handling the material properly and that you're following all the protocols that they've put in place. So this independent agency certifies you before you're even able to sell the product. So to us, it was important to kind of do that the hard way and the long way, because to us, that's the right way.
Is it possible to produce vinyl records using additive 3D printing remotely, so that you don't have to ship? You can basically print it where you want it to be?
I think that's probably, at scale, that would be challenging, but we're in Virginia, right outside of DC. We're 2 days on a truck from almost all the major distribution centers in the US, so you don't really get much closer than that when you're looking for a large-scale operation.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the platform that you have at UMG and at Spotify and maybe at Furnace as well, for the artists to be able to do a lot of things. And I want to talk about what that is, Dylan. So start with you. What are you excited about in terms of how you can leverage the Universal Music Group platform and this incredible artist roster that you have to amplify, to do some of the things we talked about with Rev this morning? What are you excited about?
We are so fortunate to have Billie Eilish as a signature member of our roster, and Billie and her team and her wonderful mom, who I think is here somewhere, have really done an immense amount to drive forward the conversation and to be the tip of the spear. They've taken the slings and arrows of being first. And that means that we have a huge amount of, we can sort of, if you're, a race car driver, you can draft behind somebody. We can then bring in other artists to draft behind what Billie has done in merch and in physical audio and in touring and in educating her fans and in making plant-based foods the standard. And I know UMG has learned a huge amount from working with Billie. What I also see are a lot of kind of half-open doors. I see artists that really would like to do it but don't know how. I see artists and artist teams who just aren't thinking about sustainability. Some who are thinking about it but think it might be too hard or too expensive. And am developing mechanisms inside UMG with my team to push on all those half-open doors and to get those artists to do what they can be doing to bring their fans and our employees and their teams and the venues and everyone, if we're talking about the Billy model, it's really everyone, into the fold when it comes to sustainability. And so there are a lot of ways. I was really inspired by the panel that I saw in the first breakout. There's so many ways to do this, and it doesn't have to be the way Billy does it. It doesn't have to be the way Coldplay does it. It doesn't have to be the way U2 did it. There are ways to bring sustainability to your fan base that's quiet. You don't have to actually, there's that old hip hop adage, like, act like you know. Just do it and don't make a big deal out of it and be the one that didn't talk about it. And I think there's just so much, there's just so much opportunity. The music industry, despite the efforts of everyone in this room and so many more of us, we're not where the rest of the corporate world is, where the rest of the industrial world is when it comes to sustainability. We've got to catch up. We have like 10 years that we need to catch up in the next, let's say, 10 months. So I really look forward to working with all of you to do that and to bring it to our artists.
Yeah, no pressure there, folks. You mentioned slings and arrows, and I don't know if that was just a term of speech, but or were there actual, challenges? That
Not actual arrows.
No, not actual arrows. Thank God. But were there other actual either pushback, criticism, or what were we referring to there?
Yeah. So what we hear from our artists who have come out ahead, come out and put their heads above the parapet. I hate all these militaristic analogies. I need to demilitarize my vocabulary. But it really feels that way to an artist who has brought their heart and what they know is right to their work and said, hey, you guys, let's do it a different way, to then be the first to be criticized when something is perceived as not perfect it's really hurtful, and it really sets us all back. And as that panel earlier today made clear, it's often attacks that are coming from farther to the left. And so you're getting it from both sides now. The perfection is absolutely demanded, and no one can reach perfect ever, let alone when we're just starting out. Yeah. So that's really what it is. I know Billy has had this issue, but even somebody who isn't trying quite as hard as Billy, they get the same kind of social media treatment.
Yep. Yeah. Hannah, talk a little bit about you're using the platform, and you were doing some interesting stuff at Coachella this weekend.
Yes, I think, I'm a huge climate nerd, and I think many climate nerds here as well. So I thought that when I joined Spotify, let's just do a bunch of science podcasts, and people will listen to that, understand the problem, and, problem solved, basically. And I quickly realized that was not the case, and we have tons of those kind of podcasts already. So we've teamed up with a lot of scientists to just try to understand, okay, how can we actually get your message out there and make people act and change. And there's a quote that I really like from Jane Goodall, that if you want to change people, you're never going to do it with the facts. It's actually, you need to do it to get to the heart, and you get to the heart through storytelling. And I think music, podcasts, so many of you, what you're doing here is really storytelling, taking the facts, but then transforming them into something that is more relatable to different people from different parts of the world, from different backgrounds. Because we can't always hear about polar bears. There are very few people that actually can relate to those. So I think we need to make it accessible and bring climate to where people are instead. So that's what we've been trying. And just to mention a few examples, I don't know here, maybe if people can guess, what do you think is the #1 genre for podcasts globally? True crime, right. Perfect. Everyone loves that kind of thing. I don't, but everyone else. I like the nerdy stuff, as I said. So we did then for One Earth Day, we did true crime, but with nature sneaked into it. So with, for example, a serial killer who only killed people in natural parks. maybe not the best too. But still, if it made people interested in this space, then that's good. We also did a recent podcast called How We Fix This, where we highlighted climate entrepreneurs, because I think really that we want more young people to go into that space. And then when we thought about the host, we didn't go with the usual suspect, but instead the Swedish actor Alexander Skarsgård, who's mainly known for Succession. Because we know that the ones that are not listening as much to climate podcast are men in that kind of age that usually love Succession. So I think doing a lot of those things, so both on platform, but then also off platform. Yeah. And that's why I think festivals is something I'm super excited about, because I think festivals is like a micro society that is more sustainable. We need to be more mindful with water and recycle, because we live in that small space for a limited time. And also people maybe try a vegan burger for their first time. Yeah. So that's why I think it's also, we do a lot of climate information at festivals. So it's not only in pure sustainability event, but also if you're there. And there I think artists have such an important role to play as well, when they actually have that center stage to convey messages, because their fans are very open to maybe change a little bit in that sense. So that's some of the things we do.
Occurs to me that maybe we should have a true crime sustainability podcast where somebody gets killed with kindness. Just a thought. You go with that there.
I'll take that one.
Yeah,
Thank
I think
you.
I take that under advisement. Ali, what do you want people to remember, to understand about sustainable vinyl or green vinyl, however you characterize it, as you look at how to integrate that into physical audio going forward?
Sure. I love the point that you made, Dylan, about when you try to do something green, there's always going to be a million people being like, well, you could have done this. It could have been a little more green. Like, you didn't think of this, so therefore it ruins it. And I think everyone who's in this room today is interested in education and learning. What more is there to know? How can we be a bit more green with something that we've already started? And there's so many interesting ideas have been brought to the conversations I've seen today. And the thing I'd like people to take away from my perspective throughout all of this is that there's a lot more complexity to my little corner of this world in terms of pressing vinyl records, beyond just sort of the highlight or the headlines of it that I would like people to think about when they think about how can they be more green, how can artists, managers, record labels make decisions that are more in line with their values as it comes to sustainability in their environment. I would just like them to kind of think about some of the things we've talked about today and how there's more to it than sort of meets the eye.
All this stuff is so complex, and to your point and Dylan's, both the political left and the political right are really good at saying, yes, but. Yeah. Yes, but what about this? What about her airplane? What about the things that aren't perfect? And that's a big challenge. Hannah, what do you want people to remember about Spotify right now in this moment and your efforts to really integrate sustainability and to pioneer that at the company?
Oh, I don't think they need to remember anything about what we are doing. I think it's more actually see what you do instead, and where you have your passion and what you're good at, and especially use your creativity and partner up with someone who knows the facts and see what you can do to engage more. So I would rather you do that. You don't need to remember what I said. You can read a report if you want to do that.
Okay, we will read that report. Dylan, I'm going to mix it up a little bit with you, because you're 10 months into this job. What's the story you want to tell when you're in this for 20 months in terms of how UMG is using its platform, its operation to elevate all the things that we all want to be elevating?
That's a good question. I think listening to Ali talk about what they're doing at Furnace, something that is really clear to me is that fans are focused on what's in front of them. They're focused on what they can touch. They're focused on the T-shirt. They're focused on the album. They're focused on being there and experiencing their idol in front of them in a live music experience. And so we absolutely do need to meet them in those places where they are, providing them with the sustainability messaging of the alternative that they get to experience in those spaces. So we will be in those spaces, meeting them there. And we also want to find ways to create case studies to bring more artists along on this journey with us. So we are going to be creating a lot of opportunities inside the company. We're going to be kind of like circling up internally in order to create that, so that we can kind of, so that all of those bricks can then be part of that wall.
Yeah, well, we are all part of the journeys that all three of you are on, and excited to see you move forward and all the great work that you're doing, and how to elevate and amplify, no pun intended, the work that you are doing to the larger music community and the public at large. Please join me in thanking Ali, Hannah, and Dylan.